Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday morning midweek show, Sidelines. Got a great lineup for you. Dan Mathews checks in just a couple of minutes, executive producer of the Chuck Oliver Show, Southern Sports Today Network, and Chuck and Chernoff in the afternoons on 680 The Fan over in Atlanta. Always a lot. He'll know what's going on with the Braves, the college scene in Atlanta, and love having him on every chance we get. Second segment, Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, The Drive down in Jackson, Mississippi, knows a lot about Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss, what's going on down in the bold new city, the capital city of Jackson. Our number 2, be joined by Doug Dean, AU Dose, down in Birmingham. He has got a lot to offer, as well as does Yancy Porter in Oxford, Mississippi. Rebel Yell Hotline. You can catch that Monday nights, 6 p.m. Central on Sports 56, WHBQ in Memphis, and Super Talk Mississippi, which is all over the great state of Mississippi. College sports all the time, just nonstop information. I watched them at Media Days. That was a sight to see. Their producer down there, Houston McDavid. I'm like, do you ever get a break? He said, no, I live on the set. They are dedicated, really, really strong crew down there. But was looking at some interesting stuff about college football. Since 1962, you know how many teams have won a national championship? Only 23. All right. Since the BCS started in 98 through the 2013 season, 11 different teams won in the 16 years we had the BCS. We started the college football playoff in 2014. 9 different teams have played, 9 years of a college football playoff. 5 teams have won it. Ohio State won the first one in 2014, and then Alabama the next year Clemson, of course, LSU in 2019, and Georgia in 21 and 22. 5 teams have won in the playoff format. 3 of them, Georgia, LSU, and Alabama from the SEC, Clemson from the ACC, Ohio State from the Big Ten. Since 1970, keep this in mind, the Big Ten, 2.5 national championships. Ohio State won in, Michigan, co-champions with Nebraska in 97. Ohio State in 02. After the game, remember, Miami had won, but they didn't win. And Ohio State ended up getting the win. And they won again in 2014. But since 1970, 2.5 national championships for the Big Ten. And the SEC, I think, has 20. Why do you think athletes and people from all over the country are moving to the South? Got something special down here. But I don't want to see the Pac-12 disappear from the landscape. But you can't fix stupid. And sometimes stupid people can't get out of their own way. That's what's going on in the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff replaces Larry Scott. You know, you didn't think you could do worse than Larry Scott, who had the Pac-12 conference office in San Francisco, and their yearly rent on the office building was $8 million. You know, that's called a lack of business acumen. Do you know what the Southeastern Conference pays for their lease of their office in downtown Birmingham by Protective Life Stadium, Top Shelf Golf, and the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame and Legacy Arena? That's a high-rent sports district, folks. You know what they pay? I'll tell you what they pay. $1. Pay up, Randolph. Trading Places. $1 is what they pay. So already the Pac-12, $8 million. I think they're moving the office. In fact, I think the Pac-12, they work remote, a lot of them do. And they can't even get their network straight. They can't even get a deal worked out in the LA TV market to carry the Pac-12 network. I mean, how does that happen? Some people are so stupid, they can screw up a 2-car funeral. Most government officials are. I mean, they think throwing money at a problem only enables the people that are screwing things up to screw more things up. But I'm just saying the Pac-12, the Pac-12 needs to get their act together. They are running out of time. It's a mess. It is an absolute mess. What's going on? And if you think that if they can't, either you almost wonder, does the Pac-12 want to drive itself out of existence? I really believe that. Hey, Rob Browne here with you, though, on Sidelines, Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 25 shows a month at least. That's 50 hours of content. If you're interested in being a sponsor, we're going to start offering packages to buy these reports for some of the schools. I'll let people know about that. But we get the message out. This is our second anniversary. We started this 6-day format August 2nd, 2 years ago. That would be 2021. At the advice of our guru, our technical advisor, producer emeritus, Bob Lockamy from Birmingham, said, go 6 days. We put a lot of content out. We cover college football, college baseball, basketball, recruiting. Obviously, there's crossover into pro sports for sure. Baseball, we love the Braves, the Cardinals, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. I still like to call them that name. I can't stand it when people change names. It's so stupid. But follow us on Twitter @Sidelines_live. We're on all social media platforms. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's very simple. YouTube.com/@Sidelines_live. Subscribe. You'll get an alert every time we go on. And you know what? We put out a lot of content. We have great guests. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, is revered. It is protected on this show. And you know what my goal in life is? To be the kind of person my dog thinks I am. I love that sign in the background. But we're going to cover a lot. We're starting college football practice this week. I think this is day 4 in Gainesville for the Gators. I mean, they're not sitting around. They're trying to get ahead. I think I've lost count of the number of people. This is it for Billy Napier. He's on the hot seat. Well, if he keeps recruiting and Florida keeps getting the players that they're getting in recruiting right now, he's going to succeed. I was watching Chris Doering this morning on SEC Now on the SEC Network on my color TV. He had his all SEC East team since 1992. You know who his quarterbacks were? Well, one of them, obviously his teammate, Danny Werfel, Choctawhatchee High School, Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Or was he Fort Walton Beach High School? Anyway, Danny Werfel way, if you go to Destin, which a lot of our listeners do, and maybe there right now, Danny Werfel was the first quarterback, and said the other one was Tim Tebow out of St. Augustine, Nice High School. I think Tim really lived in Jacksonville, but he went to Nice. I'm really looking for, a lot of movement. I think there's going to be significant movement from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. And I think Colorado leaving, that doesn't surprise me. But we're hearing there's a fight between Utah and BYU. Well, we know that. The Holy War, they call it. But which school has more Mormons? I don't know. Does BYU not want Utah in the Big 12? It's what it looks like. But the Big 12, Brett Yarmack came from New York. He's from the entertainment business. He's creating a lot of excitement around the Big 12. The question is, will they be the first team to surpass 16 members. Colorado gives them 13, and you're saying, Arizona State, Arizona, and Utah, that's 16. What about Memphis? University of Memphis. Dr. Bill Hargraves up there, he's on a mission to try to get Memphis into a major conference. And I'm just wondering if that's going to happen. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. The city of Memphis is starved. Look how they support the Grizzlies. They are committed to the Grizzlies. And they'll support the University of Memphis when the University of Memphis is committed to winning. Look at basketball. But Memphis has a real problem. They've got a lot of fans that all they care about is basketball. They don't support football. Yeah, they had them. I'm looking here. Yeah, I'm just saying. Let's think about this. If you're a fan of a school, you can't just be a fan of, say, I'm an Alabama basketball fan or Alabama football fan, and I'm a Kentucky basketball fan. Come on, you can't do it like that. And so sorry about that. And I think that what we look at in the Big 12 is there's a lot of people out there. Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, those are massive markets. So we're going to see what happens in the Big 12. But the largest, in my opinion, college sports market in America is where Dan Mathews is. Dan, sorry about the confusion on the time. That's had it for 9 but anyway, I'm talking about what's going on. Conference, realignment. Colorado bolting to the Big 12. That doesn't surprise me. Do you think Utah will do it in Arizona and Arizona State will be? And I'm thinking they're going to pass 16. They're going to make themselves the middle of America, but they're spread out everywhere. But I think they're going to go to maybe 18.
Well, I think that, it's just a situation of what do we know? We know that the Pac-12 is pretty much dead.
Yeah.
I know that yesterday George Kliavkoff tried to, pass along this media rights deal that would be mostly streaming. I think that if you really truly believe that that is a good move for the conference, then I don't know what else to tell you, because the Big 12 can offer tangible results. While we're still in a terrestrial cable world, there's still a lot more money that's in that than it is in streaming right now. Now, is necessarily streaming the future? Sure, we can make that argument. But, they don't have that to their disposal right now. And I think this also, too, a lot of these schools in the Pac-12 are just tired of really a lack of priority towards the most important sport, football. You saw last week the statement that the Pac-12 released where they talked about, our academics and everything. And Kyle Bonagura on ESPN, I pointed this out, was like, this looks like it was just to appease the university presidents. Like, this wasn't necessarily to say, hey, we're committed to, providing, every opportunity for our member institutions. And while we strive to be the best at academics, we're going to try to be the best at athletics as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had something of that in there. But Larry Scott killed the Pac-12. And now we're starting to see George Kliavkoff, unfortunately, be the one at the wheel as the ship goes underwater.
That is a great description. Larry Scott killed. And he also thought, Larry Scott, that these revenue sports, because they have a lot of Asian students in California at these schools, with global sports. And it's about football. And you watch the Pac-12 network. How many times can you show the 82 Stanford Cal game? That's the real problem. All right, Dan, I'm going to flip back. You're from Houston, born and raised in Houston. Okay, so you are Astros fan and Braves fan, but that market is an interesting market. About 20% of the people in Houston that live there, because of all the oil and natural gas business, weren't born in Houston or born in America. As a TV market, what kind of a shared, I don't think Houston gets much of a share, do they? I mean, it's. I'm not saying it's like Agnes Scott in Atlanta, but it's not big.
I mean, I would probably say at least college-wise, is that where you're necessarily going? I would say that Dallas-Fort Worth probably is a little bit more than Houston is. I mean, Houston is very much, as you mentioned, I mean, it's kind of like Atlanta, where you have a lot of people who are from Louisiana. You have a lot of people exactly through oil and gas or from other places, but you do have native Houstonians. It's not like the joke in Atlanta where, oh, hey, where are you from? No, I'm actually from Atlanta. I mean, that's an actual thing that's said in Atlanta. But I mean, I think that it's also as well. There's just so many. There's so many with that transient nature of the city. There's so many different allegiances in that city. You will meet tons of Texas people. You will meet tons of A&M people. You'll meet tons of LSU people. You'll meet a lot of Texas Tech people. I mean, it's just there's such a divisive pie in that market that, I mean, I think that's why, the difference in Atlanta is you've got the major state university less than an hour and a half away from the largest city in the state. So most of the kids that graduate from there move back to Atlanta, and they're from the Atlanta area. So that's why, Atlanta is such a massive Georgia town. And I'm sure Tech fans out there, the small majority of them right now would say, oh, well, that's, Athens isn't Atlanta. Well, guess what? It is right now. When you have the success that Georgia had, they can claim Atlanta, and they will claim Atlanta. But, I mean, to the same, argument, I mean, there's a lot of Florida grads here. There's tons of Auburn grads here, so, I mean, you do have that. I just think that with, like I said, the closer proximity of Georgia, Clemson in there, you can throw them in there.
Yeah.
And then also, too, I mean, just what the priorities are. I mean, coming from working in both the Houston and Atlanta markets, the priority in Atlanta is college football. The priority in Houston, I would say right now, are the Astros because of what they've done. The Texans, I think, just because of losing the Oilers years ago, they've always been able to keep fan interest because it's kind of a fear of, we don't show up, they leave us again kind of deal. So I think that there's been a little bit of that, but I think it's going to be interesting though with the move to the SEC. I think that if Texas and A&M can both be competitive, that maybe that raises the profile a little bit. And I think, like I said, the oil and gas industry, you probably have a lot of people from SEC schools. I mean, I talked about LSU. I'm sure there's probably a lot of Bama grads there. I know there's a lot of Ole Miss grads, surprisingly enough, for Ole Miss pulls from the state of Texas, and same deal with Arkansas as well. So you have the ability. I think it's just more or less just, the local scene just needs to get better at college football.
Yeah. When SEC Media Days, what was your biggest takeaway in terms of, wow, I didn't know that, maybe something that Commissioner Sankey said or that a coach or player said, and that you're going, okay, I feel good or I'm concerned?
I thought it was a pretty boring media days all around, Rob. I mean, I said that the largest story was something that was media created, and that was Alan Judd getting, fired from the AJC. Because, there wasn't a Brent Zwerneman, hey, Florida State and Clemson are coming to the SEC now. There wasn't anything like that. So, it was really pretty ho-hum. I think it was pretty interesting on Alabama's day, talking with J.C. Latham. Talking about, we're going to win the Joe Moore Award, he being the offensive line. That's been a group that has really kind of taken it on the chin the last few years. And Alabama kind of had gotten away from the physical attack that they were accustomed to on the offensive side of the ball. So, I think that was interesting to hear from him, and talking about joyless murder ball. It'll be interesting to see if Bama does necessarily reach that point. Jimbo Fisher, I thought, failed again. No surprise. His ego can't get out of the way for him to say, Bobby Petrino is going to call our offense. Bobby Petrino is going to coach our quarterbacks, anything of the such. He can't allow for any thought possible that he doesn't have at least some control of his offense.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of ridiculous that, like, you've had an entire offseason and you keep getting asked that question because you give a non-answer. And then he probably is one of those who behind the scenes says, well, the media is doing this. The media is doing this. No, the media is not doing it. You just don't know how to answer the question because your ego is in the way. So they're going to continue to ask the question. So I don't know, maybe get with a media coach or somebody about how to craft a response to this that is the right response, because you clearly haven't done it to this point.
Yeah. LSU is a team that really jumps out. Brian Kelly won a lot of games at Notre Dame without a lot of big-time playmakers. He's got them at LSU. And it looks like Jaden Daniels has put on 12, 15 pounds of muscle. He's a little bigger to take the hits. Watching Chris Doering this morning on SEC Network, he's got him as his best quarterback in the conference. What's the ceiling for Brian Kelly, and what do you expect in year two?
Much improved team. Now, I mean, does that necessarily mean more wins? I mean, 10 wins in year one was pretty good, but
yeah.
I think the only concern that I have about LSU is their secondary. I think everywhere else they're pretty solid. I mean, they're not quite what they've been in the past at running back right now, but probably since Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ty Davis-Price were in the backfield there, they haven't had really that much talent at the running back position because they've seen a pretty seismic shift at what necessarily is their priority offensively. They've always been a school that was able to get really good wide receiver talent. It was just being able to effectively use the said wide receivers. And in 2019, obviously they cracked the code and found that out, and they never really looked back. I think that, the key this year for them is going to be, are you getting off to faster starts? Because we saw Jaden Daniels last year get off to some really horrific slow starts, kind of the pitcher's example, I guess, if you will. He gives up 2 or 3 runs in the first inning, maybe a run or 2 in the third or fourth, and then he kind of settles in and is still able to give you a quality outing. I think that he's got to be able to cut down on the surrendering of early inning runs. And what I mean by that is complete some of those passes early in the game, be able to make some of those plays with your feet earlier in the game, where then maybe you can go into maintenance mode later on in the game. Because, 2 of the 4 games they lost last year, that was a huge reason why that happened. A&M, they just sleptwalked through that game. I think they honestly just felt like they could go in there and win that game based on talent alone. And A&M said, oh, yeah, watch this. Our season's done, but we can ruin yours. And they did.
Yeah.
The Tennessee game, I think Tennessee at the time was just a better team. The Florida State game, I think that's kind of case in point to what I was just talking about right there. If you get off to a faster start, you probably win that game. I think that Florida State, caught you by surprise. They caught you on your heels. And that's honestly been, unfortunately, at times, sometimes a calling card for LSU just because of the talent that they have in their program. But I think that Brian Kelly, as the year went along, and he even said after that game, really kind of told them, you're not going to win just based on talent alone. We're going to have to be able to beat teams, coach well, and be able to effectively have success. And, I think we saw that bought into last year. The bowl game was a massive success. You get most of your defense back. Like I said, secondary is a little bit of a concern. What does year 2 of Harold Perkins look like? And what does Mason Smith look like? I think that those are all questions to be asked, but I mean, they're not going to lack talent. And, I see the line against Florida State still keeps coming back and back and back. I got it at 3. Now it's at 2. I think that you're woefully underselling LSU in that game, because from people I've talked with, the constant message that I've gotten from people I've talked with tells me they're not going to be caught by surprise this time. As a matter of fact, they're going to try to be the aggressor on that Sunday night.
Yeah. Looking at Josh Heupel in year 3 at Tennessee, I always like to think that an offensive coordinator, if he doesn't change everything, has about a 3-year shelf life. He's got a new quarterback, Joe Milton III. He's got a strong arm, but we don't know how much he's improved or if he's improved with his short and intermediate passes. So Joe Milton III, he had the job at Michigan, lost it, came to Tennessee, got hurt, lost it to Hendon Hooker. but they were very close to one another. Is Joe Milton likely to have the kind of year Hendon Hooker had last year or better?
Josh Heupel's offensive system sure allows for it, doesn't it? I mean, I think the kind of success he's had in the past. The only thing that really kind of worries me a little bit is you lose, a guy like Jalen Hyatt.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Tennessee has recruited incredibly well these last couple of years, I still just don't necessarily know if you get the benefit of the doubt that, say, a Georgia or an Alabama or even an LSU have gotten in the last few years with losing such great talent out of your program. I know that they still feel really good about some of the guys they have. Brew McCoy is back. I think they really believe he can take yet another step this season. I think credit to Brew for deciding to stay at a school for more than 1 year. That's definitely a huge step forward for him. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, the ability is there. We know that Milton's got the arm talent. I think that at times that has been the problem, that he's got too much arm talent. And I think if nothing else, learning behind Hendon Hooker kind of allowed him to be able to play quarterback. Again, a baseball example. We hear all the time about pitchers and throwers.
Yeah.
I think he was a thrower last time. I think that, he was somebody that he's got the plus fastball. He's got the ability. It's just being able to play the position because, sometimes playing quarterback is not necessarily making the throw. It's really minimizing mistakes and making sure that you don't put yourself and your defense in bad situations. And I think that he probably had to learn that a little bit. And I think that, having the position taken away from him and being able to come back and play, with a established offense, a really good offensive line, and in an offensive system that really kind of is the quarterback's best friend in terms of not necessarily confusing you on the field.
Yeah.
I think that probably were all things that was a huge help to him.
Yeah. One more question. I know you got to get going. The Braves sitting here 68-37 right now. You think they can set the all-time record for wins in franchise history, or are they good enough to break the all-time record?
I mean, we'll see. I know that it's not for a lack of talent. I mean, they showed you tonight they can hit, they can pitch, they can do all of the things they need to do in order to be successful, in October. But in terms of records, I mean, I think at this point it's just win the division, get home field, and play at Truist Park. Because, I mean, we've seen in the past what that atmosphere can be when you have most of your games at Truist Park. I mean, I think that probably in 2021, they were playing incredibly good baseball, but also too, that energy on the field fed into the stands as well. And I know that Brian Snitker talked about it. I know a lot of the players talked about it. That was a factor, just how rowdy those atmospheres were. So I think that's probably more than anything. What they would tell you is let's just find a way to play the majority of our games here in the Battery. Because if we do, we know we're going to have a raucous crowd behind us. Now it's just, hoping that Major League Baseball doesn't put them in afternoon baseball, which, I think at this point would be kind of disingenuous. You're not going to have, the New York teams. We know that for a fact, at least it seems. The Red Sox are close, but they're probably going to be a wild card team. And then, of course, we know about the Dodgers and everybody out on the West Coast. But I think if nothing else, I mean, the teams that we have a pretty good idea are going to make the postseason. The Braves probably should be in prime time because, I mean, they still have a strong national following. They still, are an incredibly exciting, fun team to watch that I think you would get ratings for.
Yeah. What did Chuck or you call them? The TBS kids? You watch them play anywhere. The Braves, I think they were playing at Tampa about a month ago, and they're just everywhere. All right, look, before you go, let people know what you'll be talking about on the Chuck Oliver Show today and how they can follow you. And as always, appreciate it. Sorry for confusion on the time, but love having you on.
Yeah, appreciate it. At Chuck Oliver Show on Twitter is how you can find us. We're going to talk with Jesse Simonton. I know that realignment talk, I'm sure some people you glaze over whenever you hear about it, but it's in the news. We got to talk about it. We'll do that with Brandon Marcello, bottom of hour 2. And also, too, Clemson picked to win the ACC Brad Simkit from 105.5 The Roar is going to join us as well. So 11 to 1 Eastern, that's how you can join us. And apologize for the tardiness. Was cooking breakfast and completely I lost track of time.
Yeah, no problem at all. Look, always love it, man. Have a great day, Dan.
All right, see you, buddy.
Okay, bye. All right, that was Dan Mathews over in Atlanta. God, he is one of the hardest workers. Executive producer of the Chuck Oliver Show. Put that Southern Sports Today app. I like to call it the Power 1-2 Punch. Sidelines, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, and then 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central is the Chuck Oliver Show. Put the Southern Sports Today app on your phone. It's free, and it's college football year-round, 24/7. Every day, every week, every show, college football. Not a bad gig to be a part of. Love it, what he and Chuck Oliver are doing. Now, let's head down to the bold new city, Jackson, Mississippi, Madison County. Let me real quick, though, say something about the St. Paul Open. Get this in. The first ever St. Paul Open golf outing will be held October 2nd. Chickasaw Country Club in Memphis. Dinner the night before. It's to benefit the Bishop Peter J. Sarton Scholarship Fund called Michael Jordan. That's right. Michael Jordan. I know him. I worked with him for 12 years, but this one didn't play basketball, just football. 901-647-3014. If you're from Whitehaven, you went to St. Paul, Bishop Byrne, or you're just Catholic, or you just want to support a great cause, they need you. They have some more teams that can be sponsored, flag sponsorships, whole sponsorships. They also need money, participants, volunteers, items donated in lieu of cash. That is the St. Paul Open, first ever, October 2nd at Chickasaw Country Club, coming up here before you know it. And I want to say, too, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They got some new brands coming in. They're coming in actually today and tomorrow. Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Vask, Light Boots, and Hire Boots. Now, a little trivia question here, Jake. Did you know that Hire invented the cowboy boot?
I did not know that.
I didn't either. Hire and Hire. It's a great story. I did not. Johnny Carson used to always say that. I did not know that. Ed McMahon would be over there like say something. He goes, I did not know that. Look, what I do know is that you have forgotten more than most of us know as you wear your Michigan shirt here on the show today. That's interesting.
Hey, it's a running joke here at the station. Since I've picked Michigan to win the national title this year, it's Wolverine Wednesday here at our station. So
yeah.
it's they told me, they said, okay, if you're gonna really ride this out, and I went to Ameristar Casino, one of our parent partners in Vicksburg, and I put money down on Michigan to win. That every Wednesday I've got to wear the brand. It's Wolverine Wednesday.
I love it, man. Wolverine Wednesday. And listen, TK's listening right now. Jeff Tickenen, one of our sponsors and listeners, lives up in Chicago, Michigan grad, hunts down here in Burnt Cane, Arkansas, which is 23 miles from where we are. But Michigan fans all over the place. Man, you talk about a brand. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, it's in your mind as a kid watching the 10-year war, Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler. Now down south here, we got a lot of people probably going, you picked someone outside of the SEC footprint. Blasphemy. Put him in the public stocks. But you know what? You do the research. You're a civil engineer, graduated from a damn good school, Mississippi State University, with a great engineering and architecture and veterinary medicine, that new honors college. A lot of great things going on over there in Mississippi, in Starkville. Let's talk about Will Rogers, about the Bulldogs. Last year they win 9 games. Mike Leach is gone, never forgotten. Zach Arnett, I really am putting a lot of stock in my theory that as a defensive coordinator, he learned how to attack a defense by working with Mike Leach. I see a lot of carryover going forward in Mississippi State football. Do you agree, or am I nuts?
There'll be some carryover for sure. I think it's going to be a different football team. I know that they're saying all the right things that, hey, there's going to be air raid principles in this offense. And that's kind of, that's a tongue in cheek statement because there's air raid principles in just about every offense. If you think about it, all the way into the National Football League, Patrick Mahomes has talked about air raid principles. Cliff Kingsbury in the NFL has talked about it. So I think that there will be a carryover. They will throw the football this year, but I think you're going to see them do it much differently this year. I think you're going to see them do it with 11 personnel, 12 personnel. They're going to use tight ends. They brought in a couple from the transfer portal that they want to use. Barbet is a guy that wants to use the tight end. I think you're going to see them run the football more. So, yeah, I think there'll be some carryover, but I think Zach Arnett will help his defense, as you referenced, by running the football a little more. Some Mississippi State fans that tune into us, they've kind of hit the panic button into saying, hey, well, there's going to be a lot of 3 and outs for Mississippi State. I don't foresee it to be that way. I don't think that they're going run, pass, punt of the 1980s. I think this is just going to be a different offense. This is the twist he wants to put on this team, and I think they'll still throw it, but it'll look differently. Yeah,
and what I meant by carryover was not that they're going to be doing that air raid. I don't think they're going to do that. Mike Leach was the guy that did it, but I'm talking about the way the defense played. They won 9 games last year. That was impressive to do that, because what every defensive coordinator will tell you, if they're being completely forthcoming, is it puts a hell of a lot of pressure, because after about 40 snaps, those big defensive linemen start getting worn out, and they've got to have depth. Again, you can't say it enough. You've got to be 2 and 3 deep on that front 7 to win a national championship. That's why the defensive linemen are the most coveted players in college football. Now, everybody wants edge rushers, Jake, but look at Will Anderson last year. Now, I sat there and listened to Roman Harper talk at SEC Media Days. Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, and they had some great expectations for Will. But you can't, in a big game, have a 0 out to the side of your name. If you're going to be the man, you got to play like the man all the time. Pass rushers, you like an edge rusher, or would you rather have a bunch of big guys on the interior? Where do you favor it?
Definitely on the interior. I mean, it's always good to have a guy that, can get out on the edge like Will Anderson and put pressure on the quarterback. But if you're equally as talented on the offensive front and, schematically you're pretty savvy, then you can kind of box around that. You can move around that and do things that, kind of take that person out of the game. So, I tend to go more, guys that's in the middle, kind of pluggers, so to speak. You talk about Mississippi State, you look at some of their best defenses under Dan Mullen. I mean, you're talking about guys that sit right in that, 1 technique, 3 technique inside. Chris Jones, Fletcher Cox, he had a chance to move outside, moved inside. You look at Jeffrey Simmons, and of course you look at some of the big guys, Mount Cody back at 10 years ago for Alabama. You look at some of the big guys for Georgia inside. I mean, you want that meat inside, and that's the thing that we know. For instance, you take Oregon, for instance. Oregon has done a great job in bolstering their recruiting profile, but they still are just a little short. And that's why you see them down here in the South recruiting defensive linemen, because they know, look, you can have the fastest guys on the edge. You can have a quarterback that can house a play. You can have defensive backs that can run step for step. But if you don't have the guys inside, just what you said, the guys that fit inside that little square box inside the hash marks, you're not going to win that title.
Yeah. And Oregon, I referenced that yesterday. If you look at them in their big matchups with SEC teams, they don't get blown out necessarily. Now, Georgia, they did last year, but they're usually very close games, but they lose the battle, the line of scrimmage. And, you can look at example after example, and it is proven that is the fact. All right, now, switching over to Ole Miss, the Rebels. I'm looking at them and thinking to myself, that quarterback room is pretty damn deep. But they also have some defensive linemen. Last year they had a dozen. Some of those guys left, went in the portal, whatever. They had a dozen SEC caliber linemen. This Ole Miss team this year, the narrative coming out of media days from a lot of the snarky, sarcastic folks was, well, there sure wasn't a lot of talk about Ole Miss football. It was more about Kiffin. Well, that's Lane Kiffin. He's funny. And Dan Mathews was on just before you came on from over in Atlanta on the Chuck Oliver show, Southern Sports Today, and he said it's pretty boring media days. And look, I had fun, and they had great food, and they brought out one of the greatest snack trays of all time every day at 3:00. But I'm telling you, yeah, it was kind of boring. But Lane Kiffin's got Walker Howard, Jackson Dart. He's got Spencer Sanders. I'm leaving someone up. Luke Altmaier's gone, but he'll find a quarterback. But does he have the line of scrimmage wrapped up? Jake Thornton left, offensive line coach. He's gone to, as the Yankees call it, Auburn.
Yeah,
I love how they say it, Auburn.
Auburn Tigers. Yes, down on the plains. And talking to some people up there, they feel like they like this offensive front. It's just, do they have the depth? And that's going to be the key for Mississippi State and Ole Miss is what is your depth like? And you referenced a 40 play, snap count. I mean, that is true. What is your depth like on the offensive front? How well can you pivot when a guy goes down because you're going to lose a guy? And, I think Ole Miss likes their offensive front. I think that obviously Lane Kiffin's going to use Quinshon Judkins to kickstart this offense. But look, he's got a great situation. It's one of the more fascinating quarterback battles in the Southeastern Conference and the country as camp kicks off here in the next several days. And I think Jackson Dart will be the guy to start. But I mean, look, don't be surprised if you see, Spencer Sanders, they have, and I hate the term package, but some sort of a package for him, or if he gets some snaps. Walker Howard, he's going to get a shot at this thing, but I still think he's the guy next year.
Well, Jackson Dart, what is it about him that makes you think he can take them past the 8-5 season of last year? Or Spencer Sanders? I mean, Spencer was at Oklahoma State 4 years with Mike Gundy. He was coached by one of the better quarterback coaches around. But I look at Ole Miss and I'm saying Lane Kiffin, he's won with anyone at Alabama. He won with Blake Sims. Remember, out of Gainesville, Georgia. Came, I believe, as a quarterback, moved to running back, even wide receiver, back to quarterback. Jacob Coker the next year wins the national championship, and then Jalen Hurts. I just wonder about the offensive line. Okay, so now I want to switch gears to you. Southern Miss, Sun Belt Conference. There are a lot of years you can make an argument, and I love the fact, again, I'm sorry, but most of these national guys, they've got a handful of teams. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like when I worked for a investment firm. We were based in the Southeast. That was our footprint. And we covered mainly small to mid-cap companies in the Southeastern United States. We didn't initiate coverage on Johnson & Johnson and Coca-Cola and Home Depot. We didn't need to be the 105th firm to initiate coverage on them. We focused on certain things. Most of the people around the country, the national guys, they don't know about Southern Miss. You and I do. What are you from? Rankin, Mississippi?
Yes. As a matter of fact, where I live, I'm about 55 minutes from the University of Southern Mississippi.
Yeah, and I've gone by there 2.73 million times on the way to Destin to the beach. Robert State, right there, 33,000, right there in Hattiesburg. It's a cool place, but they've got a unique culture down there. I like to say it, and you said it, so I'll say it, that you said it because I said it. We're going to both say it. They don't give a damn what goes on in Starkville or Oxford. They don't care. And they're tired of being told, well, the academic standards aren't needed. But you know what? That's your right. Opinions are like, what's in elbows. Everybody's got a couple of them. They got a cool culture down there. And when Bauer was there, Jeff Bauer, 14 years, it's some pretty good things. Then they kind of got lost wandering through the wilderness. Are they coming back? I mean, because they used to get 25 or 30% of their players from Alabama. Now South Alabama's going. Now Troy's, really strong. But somehow Southern Miss looks like they're coming back.
No, I think they are coming back, and that's a credit to Will Hall, who is a Mississippi guy in his own right. Will Hall is the son of legendary high school coach Bobby Hall here in the state of Mississippi, and he went on to Tulane and had a really good run as their offensive coordinator. And he's a guy that understands the state of Mississippi. And you mentioned those schools like Troy and UAB. And then, of course, you can go over into the state of Louisiana and go, to Louisiana Tech, Louisiana Monroe, Louisiana, formerly known as Lafayette.
Yeah.
You can go, around the Sun Belt, because a lot of people say, what happened to Southern Miss? Well, what happened to Southern Miss was several things. One, all these other schools decided they were going to play football. And then also with the advent of 247 Sports and your Scout when it was relevant, your on threes, your rivals, the huddles, there's no hiding players anymore. Jeff Bauer and that team used to do a great job of finding those players that got overlooked, the quote unquote diamonds in the rough, as everybody likes to refer to. There's not a whole lot of diamonds out there in the rough anymore. I mean, if you're a player, people can see you. And I think that Southern Miss, the competition is that competition is amped up. Having saying that, though, Will Hall has done a great job now re-energizing the recruiting efforts inside the state of Mississippi. I think, and I looked at it 2 weeks ago, just about every recruit, if not all, of the 2024 class are from the state of Mississippi for Southern Miss. And that's junior college guys, high school guys. So they've made it a point to recruit the state of Mississippi. Now, obviously, they've got influx players through the transfer portal. They got a transfer quarterback from Clemson this past year. They feel like he's going to have an opportunity to compete for that job this year. This is a nice football team, and it's a much better football team than it was 3 years ago. And I think playing in the Sun Belt now gives that fan base a little more vested interest, because you have, built-in rivalries right here in the Southern footprint. They're going to play Tulane annually, even though they're in the AAC. That's an old rivalry. They're going to play the Louisiana Lafayettes, the South Alabamas, and you don't have to catch a plane like Conference USA to go watch a football game. I think the Conference USA brand really kind of turned a lot of the people off down there. But I think being in the Sun Belt and the Sun Belt Conference, which is a really, really good conference, it's a nice G5 conference, probably the second best G5 conference. And then Will Hall, this program is definitely on the uptick. And look, this is going to be a good football team this year.
And that's what I love to hear, is that you've got to get the right fit for your fan base. And you just got rivalries all around you. But I go back to what you just said. What happened to Southern Miss is what happened at UAB, at Troy, at South Alabama, at University of Louisiana, at ULM. You're right, Louisiana Tech. But I love to see how the Sun Belt teams, remember back in the 20 or the 21 season when Arkansas State and some of the other schools, University of Louisiana, went up and beat all those Big 12 teams the first or second week of the season. That created a lot of interest. And you talk about hiding players. There's another term that I remember. Al Goldman, the chief of technical market analysis at A.G. Edwards for years, would be on the Squawk Box. And he would say, in the midst of just crazy things happening in the market, he'd say, remember, everybody can't be right at the same time, at least not very often. Hiding the players. It is the fact that you sometimes you like to go find a player and you don't want him to announce that he's coming to your school. And because if word gets out that he is, and especially I notice if let's say Georgia is recruiting a kid in Mississippi, they may not want him, a high profile kid, to announce anything until signing day, because he doesn't need all that pressure over there. So you start following these trends, but that's an interesting one to watch. Like, you're talking Michigan as your national champion. And again, I was referencing some stats. I'll throw them at you once again. Since 1962, out of 133 now D1 football programs, how many different schools you think in the last 60 years have won a national championship? Would you say 23, 33, or 53?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. I'm going to go 23.
You're a civil engineer. You're right. You're correct, sir. Okay. Now, in the BCS era, 1998 to 2013, that's when the SEC really exploded. There were 11 different teams won national championships in 16 years. In the 9 years of the college football playoff, we've had 5 different teams win. LSU, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. And you look at Michigan now. You've got them picked. Prior to the last 2 years, Ohio State had beaten Michigan 15 out of 16 times. Michigan now has won 2 in a row in big fashion. I mean, 2 Big Ten titles. Michigan's won prior to winning the Big Ten in the 21 season, Michigan had not won the Big Ten since 2004. That's hard to believe. But they've now got 43 and 44 Big Ten titles. Ohio State, not far behind. They've got like 38 or something like that. But what is it going on with Michigan? And why did Jim Harbaugh, for a minor offense, get a 4-game suspension? Are there minders from Ohio State on that committee? Because when you watch TV, Jake, you know what I'm talking about. Football or basketball, you got your Joey Galloways. You've always got these minders. Like, you go for a run on the square in Beijing when you're over there on a business trip. If you're an American businessman, there are 3 or 4 minders running around making sure you don't go down the wrong street and see the latest virus being cooked up in a lab or something.
Yeah, no, you're right. Look, the Jim Harbaugh thing is kind of head scratching. I mean, it was a minor offense, and he gets a 4-game suspension. I don't know that hurts him at all, especially in the first 4 weeks. But I will tell you this about Michigan, and I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, okay, why did you pick Michigan this year?" I see a trend. At least that's the way I see it. And I think Georgia has created this trend, and not that Michigan has tried to be like Georgia, but I think, when we went, and you got to go back to when everybody started throwing the football, and you go back to, the success that LSU had with Joe Burrow, and you look at the success Clemson had with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, the success Alabama has had throwing the football. Everybody said, well, running the football has died. You got to throw the football to win. Georgia has done it their way. They play good defense. They use the tight end. They have the best tight end in the country coming back this year, Brock Bowers. They set up the pass with a run. They've kind of flipped this thing and got, kind of taken it back the other way, but using tight ends and things of that nature. If you look at Michigan, they're built very similar to Georgia. They got one of the best defensive fronts in the country. There's no question. They have one of the best offensive lines in the country coming back. There's no question on that. J.J. McCarthy is, you could say arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks coming back in college football. A lot of NFL scouts love what he brings to the table. They have the best running back room in football. And I feel like, it's very tough to win 3 in a row. We know that. I think Georgia's going to be in the playoff, but I just like what this Michigan team brings. I know that they laid an egg against TCU in the championship last year, but it feels like over the last couple of years, kind of like Georgia did when Georgia was kind of building to this thing and they went to the college football playoff. They beat Oklahoma in double overtime, lost to Alabama. They had their heartbreak moments. I feel like Michigan has had that, and I feel like quarterback is going to be the key again this year. And when you look at the contenders coming back, J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback with the best team around him in the country. He's not better than Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams doesn't have the team around him, a complete team. I think J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback with the most complete team.
Yeah, and I think the Big Ten plays good football. They really do. And Ohio State is built. I mean, Ohio State goes heavily into the state of Texas. Urban Meyer really got that going. You look at their roster, and they recruit. They go into the South, as does Michigan. I mean, when you and I were growing up, Michigan used to go in to the South regularly. You remember Jim Harbaugh was coming down to like Prattville and different places in the South and holding these camps. You know what? I admire that. Takes initiative. That's aggressive. And you know what? I think he's a hell of a coach. And people love to, you know what there's a lot of in this country, in the media, national media, a lot of groupthink, stupid groupthink. They hear it. What's that old REO Speedwagon song? Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend. No, it's more like SpongeBob SquarePants. I know this guy who knows this guy who knows this guy. My son made me watch that. I was like, I can't take any more of that. But that's what a lot of it is. The guy can flat out coach. God bless America. When you win at the University of San Diego and you win at Stanford and you win everywhere you go, I mean, people get over. This guy is a damn good coach. Do you want to play Michigan? Look, we talk in the SEC about how good we are, and it's a damn good league. It's a great league. But who wants to go play Michigan from the SEC at the Big House in mid-November? It may be 80 degrees that day. I don't know. But I think Jim Harbaugh gets a lot of unnecessary criticism by these national characters that I don't think really know much about him. I'm not a Michigan fan or graduate, but I got a lot of respect for that school. And Jim Harbaugh, you say he's cocky and he's arrogant. That's good. That's who I want leading my team. I don't want some damn wallflower who's apologizing for being great, because you shrinking to make other people around you feel less uncomfortable is wrong. You want other people to rise to the top, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I've always said this, if your quarterback doesn't have a little edge to him, if your starting pitcher on Friday night and the SEC doesn't have a little edge, if your point guard doesn't have an edge, your head football
I like
coach,
that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to have an edge. Like I said, you don't want somebody soft out there throwing the first pitch on Friday night in a South Carolina versus, LSU baseball series. I mean, you want your coach to have a little edge. And a lot of the good coaches do. I mean, Nick Saban has his version of it. Jim Harbaugh has it. We know Kirby Smart has it. You look at the best coaches in the country. You don't have a whole lot of guys that, that don't show a lot of emotion or they don't have that edge. You've got to have that edge. And I think Jim Harbaugh has that.
Yeah. And Doug Dean's on with us, AU Dose in Birmingham. And this is Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive in the bold new city, Jackson, Mississippi. He's got on his Michigan shirt, Doug. He has picked Michigan. He went to the casino and put down some cash money and has Michigan. So everything now at the station there in Jackson, it's Wolverine Wednesday, hence the Michigan jersey. But I'm going to tell you, this guy is a civil engineer, graduate from Mississippi State, does a great show. And I met you through Chuck Oliver and Dan Mathews. But Doug, like you, does a ton with matrix analytics and data. Both of y'all, every time you're on the show, you have that strength. And Doug, I just picked Michigan. It's hard. Why not?
Yeah, Michigan is an intriguing team this year. Coming off of the brush with the law that they had, but I don't have any quarrel with that out of the box pick. I mean, all he's done is spank Ohio State 2 straight years, right? And that's the biggest option. The only thing footnote, I may have said this on your Saturday morning show, Rob. I keep an eye on, Jake, Wisconsin as the fly in the ointment to cause some problems for that pick.
Oh, no, I would agree with you on that. I mean, that's going to be an intriguing football team to see how Luke Fickell kind of transforms that team into his version of Wisconsin football, bringing in Phil Longo over from North Carolina, bringing in the SMU quarterback. It's going to be fascinating to watch Wisconsin. And you look at their schedule, Wisconsin's schedule is teed up. It is not that hard. They're a team that will likely win that side of the Big Ten, and they'll likely be in the Big Ten championship. And you're right. They could cause some problems for either Michigan or Ohio State.
And honestly, I don't entirely understand outside of Buckeye Nation. I don't understand the Jim Harbaugh haters. Sure, he had a couple of years where he didn't live up to billing, and he seems to, he's not alone. When you get to the playoff, you run headlong into freight trains like Alabama and Georgia. It's just hard for anybody to win. But I would like to see, if it can't be my Auburn Tigers one of these years, I'd like to see Harbaugh break through and hoist the big crown.
Doug, that's a good point. And I agree with the power of the peninsula. That's what I call Wisconsin, there in Madison. That is a program since the early 90s when Barry Alvarez came there. You check the records. I'll bet you a steamer pack of crystals and a 30 rack of Ham's beer in the background here, that Wisconsin's got to be in the top 10, top 12 winningest programs the last 30 years. But, Jake, I know you got to go. You've got stuff to do. But, man, as always, thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday morning, Wolverine Wednesday morning, to join us.
Before Jake dashes, and I'm sure I'm not alone, your listeners and viewers want to know, can I get your show online streaming? How do I do that?
Yes, absolutely. It's on the zone1059.com. That's the zone1059.com. And Rob, if you'll send me Doug's contact information, I'll make sure to connect with him and get him all that information as well.
Yeah. I'm going to do it right now. And Doug, you want to get his matrix that he does on the picks. It's incredible stuff. Think of an engineer and he puts this stuff in the vernacular. It's awesome. I'm going to send it to you right now. Yeah. How can they follow you and keep up with you, Jake? And we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, I appreciate it as always. On Twitter at Jake Wim. That's just Jake Wim on Twitter. And of course, you can stream us on the zone1059.com. We'll be chalking up a lot of high school and SEC football today.
Well, gee whiz, somebody's got to do it, you know. Talking college football. Okay. Hey, great stuff as always. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good to meet you, Doug.
Appreciate
Talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
All righty. That's what we love, Doug. And you know, you said what I said right before you came on. The stuff about Harbaugh, God almighty, people, get over it. The guy's a hell of a coach. I mean, he won at the University of San Diego. I mean, that's not an easy place with what? And then he won at Stanford in spite of, you know, not having any lights on the field at night.
Yeah, and you know, gosh, is he in the same realm as Nick Saban and recently Kirby? No. I mean, you got to break through. But I think a little here in the Deep South, to the extent fans like the Buckeyes would calm down a little bit and give the SEC its due, and I think most of them are that rational. And for heaven's sake, under Urban Meyer, they certainly have had their big moments and lifted the trophy. But I'm getting a little weary of the disassembling of conferences in college football as we've known it for 30 or 40 years, Rob, really longer than that. In fact, I'm not an apologist for the Pac-12 or soon to be Pac-6, but I'd like them to stick around in some form or fashion. And I'm not sure that it's probably where it's headed, and that's 2 super conferences with 20 teams each, NFC and AFC, right? But I don't know. I think it's possible that will be great for TV and for money and revenue, but It's to be determined. I really don't have an opinion on it quite yet, but it's to be determined whether that will all add up to fan engagement like we've for 50 years. Yeah.
Great point. And that's a great segue. We're going to take a quick commercial break. I want to get back into fan engagement and what a 12-team playoff might mean versus a 4-team playoff. Doug Dean down in the Magic City, Birmingham with us. We'll be back for second hour number 2 on Sidelines after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Doug Dean. And Doug, this is something, I reference this a lot, but I don't know him, but Lee Fitting, I think, is executive producer of ESPN and Game Day and all that. There was a question brought up, maybe Reese Davis said it, that how do we keep fans in the South interested in November matchups like the Apple Cup Bowl, you know, Washington and Washington State, or the Civil War, Oregon and Oregon State? Well, I think the answer to that is a 12-team playoff, because in November, the top 25 or 30 teams are all thinking, hey, we can get in the playoffs. And we asked this to the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee, Mr. Bill Hancock. Saw him every day and got to talk to him a lot and had him on the show at SEC Media Days in Nashville. And he tended to agree, yeah, that's a way to do it. Are you on board with that? Or are you going to say, you guys are totally off? Y'all, Mildred in a two-piece at the beach looks better.
Yeah. There's so many moving parts to this. Let's start with the basics. It seems like TV used to serve college football, right? You always got to have a master and a servant. And it feels a lot like now college football is serving the master of television revenue. And, Buddy Martin on your show has said that we're basically everyone is an employee of ESPN right now, arguably including fans. And there's a good side to that. It gives an unbelievable revenue stream to take the pressure off these athletic departments' budgets. Now with the advent of NIL, the Alabamas and Auburns, Georgias of the world may not need. We've talked about this. They may not need the old way of raising funding, the Tigers Unlimited Fund, Tide Pride. I think you see that get slashed, not go away, but it becomes more the philanthropy and war chest for the big money premium seating, the boxes. And you're going to see stadiums, they're already shifting from 100,000 seat, one cheek only, not both cheeks stadiums to, maybe they cut 15 or 20% of that and replace it with premium boxes and seating. Yeah. I was kind of disgusted this week, Rob. You may have seen that Auburn is looking into, and it just looked cheesy to me, going down to field level and blowing up those corner of the end zone where we have flowers and so panoramic, and creating some kind of fan experience that's field level. Okay. But just more ways to monetize things. As for the playoff, what I want to see, and you and I are able to pay the bills, Rob, and we're not everyone is independently wealthy like Rob Browne. And I want to see, how does it go, even if you do have money, when you start getting into the holidays in December and even after the new year. I think you see fans being, making a forecast. If you're Alabama or Georgia, bet on the championship game. I think my guys can get there, so I'm going to keep my powder dry financially, but I'm not going to go to the second round in which my team plays Tulane and we know it's going to be a blowout. So what are the implications are we going to be watching playoff games that are half empty stadiums? I think we might in the early rounds.
Well, we got to be careful with that. First off, taking away the flowers in the four corners of Jordan-Hare Stadium. Yeah. I mean, that's something Coach Dye did, and I think it's cool. But I do know at Alabama, they have that field level. And there are a few other stadiums where you can get down on the field and you're in the background. It's open bar. It's crazy. Maybe we do go to that, but I think that the fan experience, you got to make sure you make it special. Playing in half-empty stadiums, look, you can't wait to be great. Saying I'm going to wait until we get to the playoff before I spend my money. Going to the games, I think a lot of people, what they've done, there are people that buy the season tickets, but there's also a lot of people now. There's a whole new environment. I call it the Grove effect, out of respect to Ole Miss, what they did, but the tailgate guys or wherever you go, a lot of people, they have no intention of going to the game. They've got a couple of flat screens in their tent, and they've got, cold road sodas and alcohol and food and friends. And what's going to keep people always going to the games are the business relationships and the friendships. You cannot replace personal contact. Remember that commercial just a few years ago for United Airlines when they had the older guy, in a three-piece Brooks Brothers suit? He was the sales manager, had all the employees at the big table at the skyscraper in New York City, it looked like, or Chicago, and he was throwing out airline tickets. Go see the people. You've got to go do it. I'm going to tell you, there's a new term one of the smartest football people in America. I had a great conversation with him over the weekend. He said, we got all these virus, these COVID recruiters, he calls them. They're Zooming, they're Instagramming, they're playing Fortnite and video games with these kids and texting them. And my friend asked a couple of these coaches, he said, hey, what time do they eat dinner, that kid you're recruiting? What's his mother like? What's her favorite dish? What's his house look like? You sat on the front porch and talked to her about swamp cabbage and pot liquor and spent some quality time? Because I'm going to tell you something. If you think mama or daddy or grandmama is going to trust you to take their young son for 4 or 5 years, you better get to know them. And if you think all this NIL and all this, there's so many great stories out there in college athletics right now. But as a recruiter, and I'm going to get to this, not that there's anything exciting happening in recruiting on the plains of Auburn, but you think Hugh Freeze doesn't connect with people? A guy from Independence, Coldwater, Tate County, right by the 5-star city, San Antonio. You think that guy can't relate to people like a guy that grew up, in the cotton fields down in Blythe, Georgia, working out there side by side with black folks and white folks, and they spent the night at his house. He spent the night at their house. As he said famously on Saturdays in the South, the 150th anniversary of college football, Pat Dye said, come to think of it, I ain't never been segregated a day in my life. Here you got Hugh Freeze. Now, look, I'm not saying he's Pat Dye, but he resonates. He relates to people, and he actually will stop and say hello and gives a care. He cares about people, and he's not afraid to show his face. Yeah, he's screwed up. Nobody's perfect, but he's a fighter.
Yeah, a great take, Rob. I love it when you get fired up about social
coffee,
justice, right? Traditional values. All Rob Browne at his best. But I'll tell you this: fit. We use the term in executive search and selecting the right leader. It is so critical. I don't care what the industry or organization, and certainly college football. If you don't get the CEO hire right, and in this case, I mean head coach, then you're just running with weights on your ankles, and it's usually a matter of time that you can't cobble it together with great coordinators long enough for it to work, and you start getting negatively recruited. Your rivals can say, and they're right, well, that head coach won't be there but another year or two. And that's what happened with Gus. That's what happened with Harsin. Now what you see at Auburn, and it's all you can ask for. I think Auburn people, because of our unique going through the desert, needing some Moses to part the Red Sea, and I say that, that metaphor, that choice of color, part the Crimson Sea and give you some hope that you could cross the ocean and be competitive. Well, it had been there under Suge, as you know. It certainly became more potent than any of us can recall when Coach Dye showed up in 81. And I knew something was probably right when my good Bama friends, who I treasure and we love being in the woods and water together, back then, when I saw a furrowed brow that Auburn was going to bring Pat Dye in, I said, we must be doing something right here.
Yeah.
Of course, that's how it played out. Now, I think the world of college football, if you're Auburn especially, we can't go to a recruit's home and talk about how the last 3 or 4 NFL drafts, you see our logo all through the top 10 overall picks, whether it's quarterback, offensive lineman, D lineman. Alabama can tout that. Now Georgia can tout that. But what Hugh Freeze has done, which is pretty breathtaking, is he's taken that argument of come here. Yes, our roster is loaded. You're going to have to work to break into the rotation. But if you do, then we can put you in the NFL. All that is true. It's indisputable. What Hugh Freeze has said is, that's great, but why don't you be bold and pave your own road? Don't be a copycat. And he's sort of taken that Auburn's 5-7 record last year, for God's sake, and turned it on its head and said, we're building something special here. Now, that would only work, Rob, if you've got a salesman like Hugh Freeze, who these kids look into his eyes and they see not only that he seems authentic and they believe him, then they walk through the Wolto's Performance Facility, which is arguably top 2 or 3 such facilities in the nation. That will last about a month or 2, right, Rob, in the arms race. And they're buying into it. And then if you get momentum like Auburn did last weekend, here's what can happen. I'll call a shot. I don't know if Jason Caldwell did yesterday, Rob. It's not based on direct intel. It's based on tea leaves a little bit. But shockingly, look for DeAndre Carter, the big offensive lineman out of Mater Dei in Santa Ana, California, LA area, to announce Auburn in the days ahead. Don't be shocked if 5-star generational safety that everybody wants, KJ Bolden, kind of shocks the world and announces Auburn within a week or two. Cornerback Jalewis Solomon, linebacker maybe out of Hoover and Birmingham, Bradley Shaw, if he goes Auburn, this is going to be one of the best linebacker classes with Riddick and Joseph Phillips that we've had in a long, long time. And then the biggie that you've probably been following, he did visit, I believe, Monday, Camarion Franklin, this D lineman, the best player in the state of Mississippi. I think Auburn is in great position for him. So let's just say Hugh Freeze gets the commitment. It's not a signature. That's in December. If he gets the commitment of just 4 of those, really even 3 of those 5, then you're staring at him breaking through the top 10 class with all that we've done. And oh, by the way, he early in the week, Dylan Sinde, a 6'4", 305 offensive lineman, who's one of those corn-fed Midwest guys. He was pursued by Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Iowa. So I like those offensive linemen that come from that part of the country. And what you see is the incredibly fast restocking of what the kind of roster you need to be competitive. We're not competitive on paper with Georgia and Alabama yet, maybe not LSU, but we have everything going in. The trajectory is inside of 1 to 2 years that Auburn will be, if they coach well and we have a few breaks, they'll be able to line up and make it a 4-quarter game with anybody we play. And that's been a long time coming, putting it mildly.
Yeah, it is. And Jason Caldwell wasn't able to join us yesterday. He had technical difficulties, no internet Wi-Fi there at the house. But, you think about KJ Bolden, Jalewis Solomon, DeAndre Carter, TJ Lindsey, Camarion Franklin. Camarion Franklin's from Walls, Lake Cormorant. That's in DeSoto County. I mean, it's just across, just south of Memphis. 15 minutes. Hugh Freeze. Yeah. And that's Hugh Freeze's backyard. Mm-hmm. If Auburn gets those KJ Bolden, Solomon, Carter, and Lindsey, you're talking top 5, top 6 recruiting. And I think Auburn right now, average ranking per player with only 14 commitments is 5th best in the country. That's behind the
quality is there. Now I want to be clear because you have some great Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU listeners and all the others, A&M, Arkansas. Any Auburn fan, me or anyone else that is on the basis of a couple of big time commitments the last few, Riddick and Perry Thompson, even Malcolm Simmons, is irrationally exuberant. Who was the Fed chair that liked that phrase, Rob?
Alan Greenspan.
Yeah, Greenspan. Irrational exuberance. Make a mistake. Anybody with their head on straight would rather go to war with the rosters of Georgia or Alabama right now. You agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care about quarterback. Alabama's going to figure out quarterback. And what I'm looking for as a fan, just as a fan, the whispers coming out of Tuscaloosa are that Coach Saban might be tinkering with the idea of being more run heavy, like the dance partner he had in 2009. I realized they had Julio Jones too, but they would run it down your throat, set up play action, and if Saban does that, that'll be kind of a nice complementary feature in this age of high-powered, high-octane tempo and RPOs and that like Heupel likes to do. I'd like to see some yin and yang in the SEC in that old style football. Now, what Saban will have to manage, and his coordinator Reese, is what if we get in a game where we going into it, we want to be run heavy, 60% run, and all of a sudden we smoked about 3 touchdowns through the air, and we've got to play a faster game. But they're smart. They know how to do that. But Georgia and Alabama are on top of the world. The rest of us are trying to play catch up. But it's fun to see the distribution of this elite talent start to look like, we might have 10 or 15 teams that can go into a season hoping to compete and have a chance to knock the crown off the champions.
Well, to back up what you're saying, the blue chip index, and I've studied that for years. It's a measure of 4 and 5 star players you sign in every 4-year cycle. I think Auburn's number 16, and there's only 16 schools in America that are 50% or more 4 and 5 star talent. And as bad as things have been for Auburn, the last 3 years, 17 and 19 record, they're still at number 16. So again, to remind people, in the last 60 years, only 23 schools have won national championships. And if you count national championships the way Auburn's rivals do, in the last 60 years, Auburn won one, in 83, 93. Some people claim it, but they didn't get to go to the SEC championship game, but still a great team. 04, 2010, golly, they've won some that they and you think about the narrative with Auburn. Had they played and won the national championship in 04, they won it in 10. Had they just held on those 13 seconds in 2013, and the 2017 team, number 2 in the college football playoff rankings going into the rematch with Georgia, if Cam Petway out of Prattville, Alabama would have just kept his stayed in the lanes, stayed out of the doghouse, and been a good backup running back or complement Kerryon Johnson. And Kerryon's not in the game late when Auburn had already beaten Alabama. The game was over and hurts his shoulder. Then the next week against Georgia, even as poor as Auburn's offense played in that game in the fourth quarter, it's 13-7. Auburn's moving the ball. KJ gets hit, ball drops out. Next thing you know, DeAndre Swift out of St. Joseph Prep in Metro Philadelphia goes 75 yards, touchdown Georgia. Scott Howard and Neil Hondo Williamson talking about that. But that's how close this program is, Doug. It's not far, but the last 3 years will be forgotten quickly with a bunch of wins.
But as you add a few years in life, and maybe you can, as a football fan, and God knows we get irrational and passionate and angry and all of the above down here. But I'd rather pour a good adult beverage with a lady or a gentleman who's capable of having a rational, thoughtful, balanced discussion. And I think even Georgia and Alabama fans would readily say, I don't care how stacked your talent is, and whether you have a generational quarterback and a great coaching staff, and both of those programs have all of the above right now. But you know what else you need to make it all the way to the pinnacle, Rob? A little luck.
Yes.
And 2 years ago, I'm sorry if this is taken the wrong way by a good Georgia man or woman, but that Georgia needed the luck of Alabama losing not one, but both of its top wide receivers to make that game manageable. I think Alabama beats Georgia if they have a full complement of those elite receivers, but that's football, and you can't make excuses about it. And then, of course, the dice that rolled in Georgia's favor a year ago is the assist from both LSU and Tennessee, setting it up where Georgia didn't have to face Alabama. Maybe they beat Alabama anyway. Yeah. That was a devastating and cohesive Georgia team that was doing everything well. But it's single game elimination against Bryce Young. Yeah, I'd call it a toss-up.
Yeah. Some of the best football conversations I have day in and day out are with my Alabama and Georgia friends, especially Alabama. I mean, we respect each other. I mean, we know what each other's goals are.
Yeah.
But we had Dana Duckworth. She stepped down a year ago as gymnastics coach at Alabama. She's been there since 1990, won national championships. I was introduced to her by our good friends, Dr. Waller and Susan May Veterinary Clinic. They're Auburn folks living in Tuscaloosa. They got a lot of Alabama friends. I mean, hey, there's Auburn. You cannot get any more Auburn than they are. And I'm going to tell you something. What I learned from you, Doug, is it is so critical. And, you're a great mentor to me. And that is we respect Georgia and Alabama and the rivals. You better respect them, because if you don't respect them, you won't approach it the right way. And let me say something real quick about this. There's there's a top 5 list that I'm going to get to in a second, but I want to say something. Guy May, Waller's brother, my fraternity brother, Biddy and Bo's Coffee, downtown Auburn, next to Auburn Bank. They're open daily, 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. They serve coffee, cold brew, iced coffee, lattes, matchas, frappes, smoothies, and more. Also have pastries, muffins, etc. Currently employ 25 individuals, some of the best, hardest working people you will ever meet. We're going to be doing the show from there Friday, September 1st and Saturday, September 2nd. Great folks in downtown Auburn, Biddy and Bo's Coffee. But look, Doug, I want to get your thoughts on something. This is an incredible list. Top 5 linebackers of all time at Auburn. And you're going to take a lot of pride in this, being born and raised, a proud native son of Birmingham. Top 5 linebackers of all time. And this is an incredible list. I'm going to throw them out at you, and you just tell me what you think. Number 5, Greg Carr. Number 4, Freddie Smith. Number 3, Andre Bruce. Number 2, Carlos Dansby. And number 1, Takeo Spikes. And I'll just say this, Greg Carr, what a badass. In the offseason, when he played in the NFL for the Steelers for 6 years, Greg Carr went to medical school. He's now an orthopedic surgeon in Birmingham. But 2 of those top 5 all-time greatest Auburn linebackers went to the same high school. Can you tell me which high school that is?
Let's see. Bear with me. 2 of the 5 you named went to the same high school.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I know you know it. You're too smart.
Now I'm probably going to roll snake eyes on this. Freddie Smith and maybe Bruce? No?
Carlos Dansby and Greg Carr, Woodlawn High School in Birmingham.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you had Dansby in your group.
Yeah, this is from Saturdays Down South. Saturday Down South put this list out.
Andre Bruce, because I think of him as more of an edge rusher.
Yeah, I know. That's weird. He's not a linebacker. He's a dang defensive end.
And I got the replacement. I'm fascinated, Rob, with various psychological phenomenons. Like one of them is confirmation bias. One of them is, you see it with football fans all the time. We see what we want to see. But the recentness, you got to have the great Captain Crunch, Mike Cullen, somewhere.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Think about Bill Cody in the late 60s, defensive end. I mean, his brother Dave is listening right now, but Dave, if I'm right or wrong, your brother was an edge rusher back then per se. I mean, but he was an All-American linebacker, played in the NFL for 10 years.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to, my bias with my friend, and we got to get him on the show, Takeo Spikes. I talked to Takeo last night. He caused a buzz on Al Gore's interwebs last night. News broke that Takeo was in Jaguars swag down in Jacksonville, and he was roaming around the practice, and they were rumoring that maybe he was going to join the Jags staff. And I called or texted Takeo, and I said, all right, spill the rumor control, Takeo. And he said, man, I'm all SEC, Doug. But I've got to go around the various programs. He said, I'm working on my schematics for this coming season. So guess what he's doing? He's going into various NFL programs and practices and learning what they do, because whatever gets done in the NFL usually gets copycatted in college football. And that shows you the work ethic of Takeo. But Takeo, I love all those the hardest hitting linebacker. If you talk to Auburn people that have been around a while, they'll tell you Freddie Smith was a fish hitter and I think still holds a tackles record at Auburn. But Takeo would top the list for me because of legendary stuff like that. For God's sake, his mom named him after a Japanese prime minister, and Takeo translates great warrior. So, I mean, it was from the time he was born, that was destiny. But that game, I was there, 97, Auburn, LSU in Death Valley, and Auburn jumped out to a big lead. Cecil the Diesel Collins runs wild the rest of the first half and into the third quarter. And the great Bill Oliver, our DC at the time, would say famously, if Takeo Spikes hadn't been in that game Cecil the Diesel would have run for 500 yards.
Yeah. That's so cool what you said about Takeo. It's the same thing with Roman Harper. These guys study. Every time I saw Roman, he goes, you keep saying I'm going to go into coaching. He goes, I'm not. He goes, I have the greatest job in the world. He's got a great wife, 4 young kids, and he works out all the time. And he's really proud that he's from Prattville, Alabama. You watch any interview he does, he will go back and thank all the people where he's from. Just like Takeo. I got to talk to him. He could get you fired up to run into a Mack truck.
Well, you don't, on the one hand, you don't have to have played college football at a high level to be able to go learn it. And there's a lot of information available. People can become tremendous analysts. I'm not there yet, but I aspire to it. But it certainly helps both credibility and just foundational knowledge of the fundamentals of the game and what's changed in the game and what happens in the big clutch moments. I like Roman Harper. He's tremendous on the SEC network. So is Takeo. Takeo's really grown into that role. And when it's like the E.F. Hutton, Rob, when Takeo Spikes talks, people listen. And that, it helps to have a size 22 neck when you go on air, that physical presence. By the way, if you're bringing Yancy on, I would love if you'll allow me to fake it as a co-host to put a question or two to Yancy Porter that I'm fascinated with Ole Miss about.
Doug, you and I have a sniper spotter relationship. I'll be spotter sniper. You know that anytime. You don't even have to ask. But I'll tell you one thing I love about that list. And Dave just reminded me it's his brother Wild Bill Cody's 79th birthday. Great player, and he's famous in that game against Florida in the late 60s. Just an incredible career. But again, he lived right down the street from the Mannings in New Orleans, from Archie Manning when he played for the Saints. But going back to that list, number 5, Greg Carr. He was part of the worst. That recruiting class was ranked 9th or 10th out of 10 schools in February of 80, whatever. And 4 years later, he stands on the field as the sun set on a crisp, cool November afternoon in Athens, Georgia, as Auburn defeated the Georgia Bulldogs. He'd won 3 straight SEC titles, 13-7. Said that the hair on the back of his neck stood and gave him chills. Did you know that on the Kick 6 game, November 30th, night of 2013, I'm on the field looking for the Wilson and Max, who were somewhere in that crowd. They were in section 42. And I didn't know it at the time. Max was on the TV set over in the corner with Chris Fowler and Gus standing between all these cheerleaders and beautiful women. My 13-year-old son at the time, wearing his Cam jersey, was waving Auburn pom-poms. Wilson was somewhere in the crowd. I'm not kidding you. I'm out there at the AU logo in the middle of the field with all that going on. There's 2 people there, me, and I look up, it's Greg Carr. And I said, I'll never forget that. And he goes, wow. I said, well, Greg, you helped make all this happen. And he just goes, man, I'm proud to be a part of it. But that is so cool. So you talk about Spikes, number 1, Andre Bruce. Yeah, he's an edge rusher. You could even throw Kurt Crane in there. You talk about just a crippling hitter. I mean, he crushed people. And then a guy that had all the potential in the world, Trey Blackman out of LaGrange, Georgia. That's another one. But here comes Yancy. But Doug, we're going to get into that. I'm gonna come at you with the 5 greatest running backs of Auburn, and I'm gonna hit you with that one on another day here in the next couple of days. I'm going to give you, because Freddie Smith, by the way, had 113 rushing touchdowns at Athens, Alabama High School before he even got to Auburn.
Wow.
Yeah. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch him Monday nights, Sports 56 WHBQ, 6 p.m., and also Super Talk Mississippi. Doug Dean on over in Birmingham, and I know Yancey, Doug's got a question for you, and we're coming right out of the bullpen. When you get on Sidelines, hey, how you doing? It's like you live in the median on the I-55. You got to pull out of your driveway doing 110. Doug? I'm on the coffee, second cup, man.
Yancy, how you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing better than I deserve. I cannot complain. Beautiful day.
That's great. I was going to joke with Rob and you guys. Somebody always posts in mid-August. I think I just saw the day of the long sun that's getting chilly. Or no, it's not getting chilly, but we can at least dream. Means football's a week or two closer. But I was actually in Alaska 2 weeks ago, and I just kind of squinted my eyes and pretended it was Lee County in November, And maybe if we can make it a few more weeks, we will be doing what we love the most in these parts. Yancy, I come in peace here as an Auburn fan. I am, if allowed, I'm a Kiffin admirer, not a fanboy, but an admirer. And anybody that follows football is dishonest intellectually if they don't admire Kiffin. I wanted to tell you, thank God Kiffin, if no one else at SEC Media Days, will say the quiet part out loud, which is the BS of how college football is currently designed. And granted, some of it was set in motion by an unusual Supreme Court ruling that was way ahead of our pragmatic ability to design it and get it working reasonably like the NFL is. But Kiffin saying that, that cheating has been legalized and that this is unsustainable to have 24/7, 365 free agency, and the coach can't even rely on a contract period of kids, and that the school with the biggest, most generous donors has been set up to be the consistent winner. I do want to say to that, that part didn't change, if you know what I mean. Maybe it was dirty money, but the school with the biggest donors has been landing the best talent as long as I can remember. So I just want to give you a blank check to react to what we heard from Lane Kiffin in SEC Media Days.
Yancy, are you there?
Maybe muted.
Yeah, Yancy, you may be
there
muted.
We go.
Okay,
I apologize. My face hit the phone there. No, Kiffin's going to tell you like it is. I mean, he's frustrated that, like you said, all the points. Who has the most money in their NIL? And look, nobody's using the transfer portal more than Kiffin, right? I mean, you look at the last 2 years. So it's not that he's against players' free movement to be able to go to school, but it shouldn't all be about money. And we all know this. That's, this they opened up the Pandora's box. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It is what it is right now, but he's frustrated. It shouldn't be this way. How do we get a balance? I don't know, but he's looking for it.
Yeah. And Yancy, talking schemes and X's and O's, you'll appreciate that in his heyday, what Gus Malzahn could do with the running game and the innovations with that off of a wing tee and modernizing that was, especially that 2013, what we were able to do running the ball. But since then, Lane Kiffin, how he's creating eye candy and just taking linebackers and defenders' eye off of where the ball is going is remarkable to watch. Can you give us a little ball on what he's doing? It seems like he's pulling offensive linemen and running away from where you would think they're going to block. What else do you have to say about this incredible running game, obviously led by, I think, the best back in the SEC, Quinshawn Judkins, who got stolen out from under Auburn in Pike Road, Alabama?
Well, it really wasn't a steal. That was really, you could go back to Rob on this. That was the coach there at Auburn just really wasn't doing a whole lot of recruiting, the prior coach there. Now we see what happens when you have a staff and a head coach that is focused on recruiting. There with Hugh Freeze, and it's night and day what's going on in the recruiting circles around Auburn. This year, since they've hired Freeze from the prior 2 or 3 years with your last coach there. So, no, but yeah, Kiffin is very misunderstood offensively. When people think of Lane Kiffin, up until probably this past year, they think of throwing the ball all over the field, which it could not be more the opposite. Yes, he likes to throw the ball all over the field, but his offense is going to be predicated on what? On the run game. Always has. You look at Lane's first 2 years before Judkins got there, they were number 3 in the country in rushing and number 5 in the country in rushing. So He is not a air raid, spread the ball, throw the ball 70 times a game type coach. And you're right. What you just made a parallel with Gus is a great comparison, because what they both do is set you up with the eye candy, right? And what makes Kiffin's offense, the running game, so effective, I would say, is you just hit the nail on the head. You have offensive linemen that are going to block this way, and the running back runs the opposite way, right? There's just so many different things that get your eyes in the wrong places when you're trying to defend Ole Miss's run game.
Ole Miss
yeah, Doug.
is the most enviable quarterback in the league right now. So you add Lane Kiffin's genius to all of that. And yes, they're going to be run heavy, I suppose, but I assume that Ole Miss fans are pretty upbeat about this offense's ability to be extremely productive this year.
Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more explosive this year. Last year, you had a brand new quarterback, an 18-year-old quarterback. You had only one productive wide receiver in that wide receiver room last year, and this year is totally different. And also, you didn't have any tight ends that had any experience in any production in the tight end room. And this year's totally the opposite. You've got 5 or 6 really explosive wide receivers, and you've got 3 tight ends now that have had a lot of success on the D1 level, and 2 of them that are very explosive. So it's going to be a lot more balanced, whereas last year they really hung their hat on that running game, and that's what made the engine run, so to speak. This year, they're just going to be a lot more explosive because they've got receivers now this year. They've got tight ends this year. They've got 4 of the 5 offensive linemen that are returning this year. They really had problems with pass protection last year. Ole Miss only gave up 11 sacks, which tied Georgia for the fewest amount of sacks in the SEC. But if you look inside those numbers, they gave up the 3rd most quarterback pressures in the SEC. So while Dart was able to elude a lot of the pressure and the sack numbers were not high, there was constant pressure on him. So having those 2 freshman offensive tackles last year that started 12 games coming back for their sophomore year is going to really, allow Dart to be more settled in the pocket, have more explosive playmakers at the wide receiver group and the tight end group. It's going to be a lot more explosive offense. It's going to be very similar to what you saw in that 2020 offense when Matt Corral was there.
Looming October 21. You're playing for that game. I know Rob will probably make it. I'd love to buy you an adult beverage for a little while for that.
Hope you can get down there, Yancy.
Anybody that knows me knows that I love to partake in adult beverages. So I will definitely take you up on that one. But no, look, Auburn, I've always said this, is always my favorite game to go to on the road each year because of the fans. The fans at Auburn have always the nicest and most southern hospitality than anywhere that I've been to, and I've been to them all.
Can't beat that as a compliment. Yeah. Doug, look, man, appreciate you being on here with us. And was that, are you signing out? I couldn't because you're break. Okay. Hey, look, we'll get you back on the round table Saturday. Great stuff as always. Doug Dean, the AU Dose down in Birmingham. And let me throw in a bit of trivia. Whoops, here we go. Get Yancy back on here with us. But we were talking about, 5 greatest linebackers in Auburn history. And one of them you got to think about, Wild Bill Cody. In the 1965, I guess, Auburn-Florida game, I think it was 65, he returned 2 touchdowns off of deflected passes against Steve Spurrier. And in his book that Steve Spurrier wrote about his life in football, he signed his copy to Wild Bill Cody, to my best receiver. And Wild Bill Cody at Auburn also blocked for Tom Dempsey on the then NFL record 63-yard field goal in 1970. Wow, that's pretty cool to think about that. And you remember, Yancy, I don't even know if you were around then. We were both little guys, but Tom Dempsey's 63-yard field goal. And now We got people that are kicking them 65 to 70. Question is, can you do it when you got a bunch of people trying to, take your head off? That's a question. Hey, I love that discussion about Kiffin and the Ole Miss offensive line. And that's a really interesting case that you laid out. Among the fewest teams in terms of giving up sacks, but a lot of quarterback pressures. Kind of Captain Obvious moment here. But he is saying the Ole Miss quarterback has got to be mobile in that offense to be effective.
Yeah,
I just thought I'd tee you up for that one.
Yeah, but look, we've seen Kiffin have the prototype, quarterbacks, the 80s and 90s, the big kids that are 6'5", 220, that are not very mobile. We've seen those in Kiffin's past offenses as well. But what he has revolved to with the running game, kind of setting up the passing game, mobility is critical for any quarterback that's going to be in a Lane Kiffin offense.
Yeah, you pointed out a couple of years ago, Luke Altmaier, Jackson Dart, and you said it. You were always the tip of the spear. 27 years you've covered the Ole Miss Rebels. And again, catch Yancy Porter Monday nights, 6 p.m. Central, Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, and all over on Super Talk Mississippi. But you said Jackson Dart is more of a gunslinger, more of what Lane Kiffin wants in a quarterback. You were right.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a quarterback that believes in his arm, that believes in the psyche, that he can make those throws to win games, to make that big third down pass, whereas others are going to play it more safe. When you're at Ole Miss, you're not going to be the most talented team on the field game in and game out. You've got to have your quarterback has to tilt the field towards your way to make up for a lack of talent at other positions. And Lane Kiffin knows that, and that's why Jackson Dart is a great fit for him.
Yeah, I mean, an ideal fit. And Yancy, got a question for you. I know you love music, you love to travel, you read a lot, you write, but you're a gregarious people person. I got to ask you this. I'm going to go back and forth here real quick. Greatest singer, songwriter you've ever seen. You ever seen Bob Dylan live?
I have seen Bob Dylan, but I still got to go with Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then Jerry Garcia. I was watching a video the other day. Uncle Charlie, my good friend, spent at least 20 Bob Dylan shows. My Back Pages, that 30th anniversary Bob Dylan. You talk about up at Madison Square Garden, who's who. It looked like George Harrison up there, Eric Clapton, Tom Petty, Neil Young, Bob Dylan got that song. That voice of Bob Dylan, he's an incredible talent. Sometimes he sounds like some guy hunched up on the toilet going, ooh, he got an incredible voice. It's like, Bob, you didn't know that Bob Dylan has bronchial asthma. No, it ain't bronchial asthma, but I'm just curious because you know your music.
I love Dylan. I think he's probably the greatest songwriter, along with Neil Young that we just talked about, or you just referred to. But Jerry, putting the combo of the voice with the writing skills, I've got to go with Jerry.
Yeah, and my kids
before he got on smack really bad.
Yeah, and my kids love to go to these music festivals. Austin, Texas. I go to Red Rocks, Colorado, and they love to. Wilson and his crowd love the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Widespread Panic. But I'm going to get back. Let's get back to football. But this all ties in together. Great food, great football, and great friendships. Yancy, I know it's a popular narrative that a lot of people love to push, but I think misery loves company. When people say, well, the crowds, people aren't going to go to the game. They can watch the game on TV. Let me tell you something. Nobody wants to be captive and laying on a couch all day. You'll get scoliosis. You'll get back pains and muscle problems. And, it's not good for you. I think people go to the games just as much for the football game as they do to see their friends in the flesh. And think about all the business deals that are transacted. I mean, where is the business done in the South? On a golf course, after a tennis match, in a duck blind, on a boat fishing, or at a football game, or a basketball, or baseball. People will always go to the games. And that narrative back during the pandemic, stay safe, stay home, stay alone, lock the doors, put a mask on, go broke safely. You know, it's like people who buy CDs in a stock market increasing in value. We always tell people, if you're going to keep your money in a checking or savings account, not put some of it into the stock market, that's okay. You'll go broke safely. Let's talk about getting people to those games and getting down. Because when I go to Oxford for breakfast, I want to start off going to the Beacon. And then, take the kids. They love going to the candy shop. Love going to Proud Larry's. There's so damn many good restaurants down there. But Yancy, you know what? I think we're just going to have bigger crowds going forward. And I call it the Grove effect. Y'all started it. You remember, don't deny it, back in the days of the old wood panel station wagons like Clark Griswold and Ellen. Y'all went to the Grove. A few people got together out there. And over time, it's become the tip of the spear for tailgating. Now, with the tailgate guys and all that stuff going on around the country, everybody just wants to be there. There may be 90 or 100,000 inside of said stadium at said university. You pick the location. And then, I don't know what I did to Yancy. I lost him. But you think about it, that what we have is, people just want to be a part of the game. They want to be, they want to go there and see their friends and visit with people, have cocktails, eat great food, and be there, be it in Oxford, the Walk of Champions, through the Grove. Tradition never graduates. Now, I hope the aliens did not grab Yancey Porter. I'm hopeful of that. Suddenly we lost him. It's like, he was on the radar and he's gone. But been an unbelievably fun show today. We'll be back tomorrow morning. And Yancy is back here with us. We got a couple of more minutes. Yancy, I don't know if aliens, were you abducted by aliens?
I went to Bermuda Triangle. I'm coming back.
Well,
you
were
South Haven, had a meeting over there this morning and right about to Oxford, and boom, you just went out. I was like, what in the world? But yes, people are going to be going back to the games, Rob. I think this year you're going to see a bigger increase than what we saw last year from the year before. It tickles me to death. Like when I see, even up to today, like somebody wearing a mask inside their car riding around. You're like, what in the world is this person thinking? Like you said, you got to get out. You got to breathe fresh air. You got to be around people. And look, I've been excited, and you hit the nail on the head also with this, about the business opportunities and deals and sales that I'm going to be able to make and connect this fall as I am the ball games.
Yeah.
So, yes, business is done. When there's entertaining times, like you said, hunting, fishing, going to football games, it's a religion here in the Deep South. I think the stadiums are going to be packed from each SEC school to the next. I think it's going to be as big as crowds as we saw pre-pandemic. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. And you cannot help but be feeling this way, because you and I are blessed to get to do shows and get a message out. We have but a show is because you have great guests, great listeners, great sponsors, right, viewers, whatever. But I'm going to tell you something, man. You think about it, the relationships, man. You cannot get those. And I referenced with Doug that United Airlines commercial a few years ago with the older gentleman, the sales manager, had everybody in the conference room in the skyscraper. You could tell it was New York City, and they were looking out over the skyline of the city, and he was throwing out airline tickets and said, all right, Albuquerque, Houston, Oklahoma City, Memphis, Santa Fe, Denver, Seattle, Olathe, Kansas, Terre Haute, Indianapolis. Go see your people. That's what we're talking about, okay? And you can sit around, and you know what? Somebody sent me a meme the other day of a girl checking out. Guy was buying groceries, and he goes, here's the girl behind the plastic plexiglass touching with her hands every bit of food that I have here. And and wearing, a mask. And we're going to refer to these when we look back in history, all the people driving around in a car with the windows up, wearing a mask by themselves, as the dumb ages. We've had the Bronze Age, the Stone Age. This will be referred to as the dumb ages. And I got a message for all you people out there. You know what? You negative, whining BMW, bitch, moaning, wine culture people. If y'all had been around, like Meet the Press, if they'd have been around at the time that the candle was invented, y'all would have lamented. At the time the light bulb was invented, you would have lamented the death of the candle. So,
but Rob, here's an interesting.
I'm not saying don't be safe. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to be smart, but don't be stupid.
Of course, yeah. People that have health conditions that don't. I get it. But back to the attendance wise, I think what you're seeing too, and what we really didn't see, is change is tough for a lot of people. And this transfer portal really was tough on a lot of fans, right? Because you get emotionally attached to those players. But what we've seen is now it is really evening out the SEC. The bottom teams in the SEC, even the Vanderbilts, the South Carolinas, the Kentuckys, the Ole Misses, the Mississippi States. What's happened during this transfer portal? They're getting better. So that gives those programs fans hope. So this is going to allow the SEC to grow, in my opinion. I don't like the transfer portal, the way that it's set up, but the end means is it might be better because now we're seeing the programs that didn't have hope now have hope. Yeah. And what is going to happen to that? Those programs are going to put more fans in the stands, and they're going to grow as a program. So really, this transfer portal might have been just what the doctor ordered for the SEC.
Man, look, I mean, it's more fun than being in a barrel full of drunk monkeys rolling downhill going to an SEC or college football game. You cannot beat the environment, but it's the people that we love, the people and the food. You can't beat it. That's what we're all about. Look, we've run out of time. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline's been with us. Let me say this before Yancy tags out. Most often, we will see the face of Christ in the least among us. Think about that. It ain't hard to figure out. Never miss an opportunity to help the people who help you along the way. And a kind word or two to somebody that you don't even know may be the difference in their life from here forever on out. Yancy, let them tag out. Tell them how they can follow you, and we'll be back tomorrow, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Yancy, are you there? Yeah.
I am. May you and all the listeners have a blessed day, and just follow me at Yancy Porter, whatever social media there is on it. Very simple.
All right, folks, we're out of here. Thanks a lot. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.